welcome. We're all live. Thank you very much for joining us today for our webinar, collaboration between Bitrise and Embrace today. So we're going to wait a couple of minutes just to make sure everyone is joining the room. So if you want to grab a really quick coffee, if you want to get comfortable, we're going to kick things off very shortly. So yeah, while we're waiting that last minute, please feel free to say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from, what kind of mobile projects you're working on, or if you have any particular challenges or topics you'd like us to hopefully cover today, or maybe addressing the Q&A at the end. Feel free to pop those in the chat as well. It's really exciting to have both the Bitrise and Embrace teams together for this session. There should be lots of really cool content coming your way very shortly. We'll give it another few seconds and then we'll jump in. Hello, folks in the chat. Hello. All right, we're a couple of minutes in. Let's kick off. So again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. It's really good to see so many of you here with us today. So today's session is all about increasing our velocity in the entire mobile development lifecycle. So not just when we're building from the CI/CD perspective, but even when things are live in production as well, via some really nice observability techniques, which we're going to look at. So let's jump in with some intros. So my name is Seb. I'm the head of product marketing here at Bitrise. I'm your host today, but today is most definitely not about me. My colleagues Naveen and David are going to be doing all of the heavy lifting today. So we have Naveen, who is our solutions architect here at Bitrise. He has super deep expertise with mobile app delivery, but he's also dabbled in all sorts of other things. He's worked for Salesforce. He's founded some startups. But here at Bitrise, he's optimizing our customers' CI/CD pipelines to try and make developers as productive as possible. And then we're joined by Dave from Embrace, who is a developer relations engineer. And like Naveen, he's also a career mobile engineer. He was building mobile apps before Swift was even a thing. He's also been a technical educator. But at Embrace, he's helping mobile engineers improve their app performance by using some of the really nice observability techniques, which he's going to be sharing with us today. So about today. As we said, today's all about increasing velocity in that entire mobile development lifecycle. Two sides to this. There's building and deploying the app, of course. We're going to look at also, in addition to that, what we can do once users are actually tapping around in the published app as well. So to kick us off, Naveen will show us how to speed up and streamline the CI/CD process at the start. We're going to look at how we can make our build, test, and release pipelines as fast and reliable as possible. He'll then hand over to Dave from Embrace. Dave's going to shift the focus to what happens after the release and really dive into the observability side and show to us how we can gain an understanding of how our app is performing once it's actually in our users' hands. Both of these approaches are really clever, really good. They're even better when you use them together. So that's why we'll then join forces to show you how you can seamlessly integrate Embrace into the Bitrise platform. Then we've got a little challenge for you, and it comes with a little reward as well if you manage to crack it. So if you want to hear a little bit more about this, please do stay tuned until the end. We'll take you through it. And then last but not least, we will do some Q&A if we've got time. So please, throughout Naveen and Dave's presentations, feel free to pop your questions in the chat, and I will get back to you right at the end of the session, and we'll go through those as many as possible while we've still got time. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Naveen. Naveen, please take it away.
Thank you, Seb. I am thrilled to be here, and together we will look at CI/CD strategies to make your development go faster. I would like to first start with a quick poll to understand my audience here today. So the poll, you should see a poll right now. Do you use Bitrise for your mobile CI/CD workflows today? Let us know. If you use it for your iOS apps. All right, I've got a very good split today. Continue voting. All right, some of you have used Bitrise. Some of you use it for both Android and iOS, and about 1/3 of you have not yet used Bitrise. All right, that's a good split. That gives me a good idea. Thank you very much. And let's continue with this question to frame today's discussion. Would you like to make your builds run faster or wait around for builds to complete? The answer is fairly obvious, and we want the builds to complete faster. So what is needed to make builds go faster? We need infrastructure on the right side, which is powerful machines and an up-to-date build environment. And then you need efficient workflows, which is where the software innovation in CI/CD comes. Now, they're not independent of each other. Powerful infrastructure enables efficient workflows, and efficient workflows maximizes the infrastructure. Today, in this session, I'll focus on efficient workflows on the left. And before I go into that, I want to show you a couple of highlights about our infrastructure. Bitrise is a vertically integrated platform. We have our own data centers in US, and we are launching a new one soon in EU. And our development environment is regularly updated, weekly even. And an example of that is the Xcode betas available in 24 hours since its release, as was the case with Xcode 26 recently. All right, now let's delve deeper into efficient CI/CD workflows. Now, let's put some numbers to it to get some focus here. Let's say, let's assume a certain developer hourly cost. And if your average builds per day is 50, and if we can get 20 minutes improvement in those builds, then that adds up to a total of $600,000 saved per year. Now, it may not be 20 minutes every build, but the idea here is time saved per build adds up. So now the question becomes, where can we save 20 minutes per build? Broadly, a CI/CD workflow can be split into a build phase, test phase, and release phase. And also, we have setup and optimization that runs throughout the lifetime of CI/CD. Now, I want to highlight one feature that we recently released with respect to setup and optimization, where you can chat with your builds. And that is the Bitrise MCP server. Using your favorite AI client, it's Cloud Desktop or even VS Code, you can chat with your data in your Bitrise environment, your projects, your logs, etc. Setting up that is easy. I just wanted to showcase that here in VS Code. Open it, press Command-Shift-P, and then in the user preferences, just paste the JSON that you see on the left-hand side, generate a Bitrise token, and add that there, and that is it. Now, on the right side, on the chat, choose agent, and you can ask any question. And I did ask a question to the MCP server today, but before I go into that question, I want to highlight using agentic AI steps on Bitrise. So in a Bitrise workflow, you can add agentic steps. For example, AI code reviewer. This is using Cloud Code within it to review the code and post a comment onto your repository. In this case, GitHub, which is what you see on the right side. These are custom steps that you can add to workflow. Another example is AI issue debugger, where this step looks, if there is an issue with the workflow, it looks at the logs and your source code, which is within the VM. It doesn't go anywhere outside of that, and then identifies the issue. And the use case here is that this issue, for example, can be sent to your team the solution identified can be sent to a team for a faster resolution. And soon in the future, we will have the ability within Bitrise itself to fix the issue. We'll have a fix it button added, which can then try and generate code or rewrite the code to fix the issue, run the test cases again, and if it succeeds, create a PR. Right, that's coming down the pipe. All right, a quick poll again. Have you used AI in your CI pipelines? Answer with the poll that's coming up. If you use MCP server, but haven't used AI steps in CI yet, you have used MCP server and you've used CI. And no, we want to learn more and evaluate using AI in your CI, or if your org is taking a wait and watch approach to. That's great. I can see a lot of you waiting to learn more about it. We are in the learning phase, and AI is reaching the stage of it where where a lot of our customers, what we're seeing is they want to experiment with it and identify the value proposition. That's fantastic. 80% of you, that's fantastic. And I can see 4% of you have used MCP server. Great. And the AI steps, yes, that's the next step here to AI adoption within CI. That'll be a fantastic next step that Bitrise is leaning into. Thank you for the poll there. All right. So let's go back to the MCP server where I wanted to ask a question. And the question I asked MCP server that I was preparing for this presentation was how to increase build speed. This was an Android project. So it suggested 3 things. 1, enabled greater parallelization. 2, use Bitrise caching. 3, such parallel workflows. So let's take each one of them one by one. So what I did was I ran, using DuckDuckGo open source Android project, I ran a compile debug unit test Kotlin command with parallel flag and without parallel flag. So over to the left, you can see 2 times here, 6 minutes, 51 seconds. That is with parallel flag, and 7 minutes, 33 seconds without parallel flag. I ran this on an 8 vCPU Bitrise large machine. So I thought, why not try a bigger machine? Will there be a difference? All right, so I did that with a Bitrise Excel machine, which is 16 vCPU and 64 GB. And what I found interesting really was this difference. 6 minutes, 51 seconds versus 3 minutes, 49 seconds. That's a 3 minutes gain by choosing that Bitrise Excel machine. So I thought, why not a bigger machine? So I tried with Bitrise 7 Excel machine, which is 48 vCPU and 192 GB. And I didn't see much gain there. So I thought, let's drill down. So what I looked at was the Bitrise has a VM monitoring tab, so we can see the virtual machine's performance. So I wanted to zoom in onto the load average graph, which is on the left side bottom on here. So for each of those runs, I looked at the load average. So in this graph, the purple line, what it shows is the number of processes being executed or waiting to execute in a 1 minute period, right? And the red line is the number of processors we have. So you can see for more than half the build, there were more processors waiting to execute than the CPUs available, which is why in the 16 vCPU, we saw those performance gains. And here you see most of the processes executed, there was no much wait time, right? So that is why when we added the 48 vCPU, there was no much performance improvement because there was so much capacity that was left to spare. All right, so by choosing the right machine type, we started with the parallel flag, but then we discovered by using the right machine type, we actually gained 3 minutes. And that's for unit tests alone. So it stands to reason that for integration tests and for release build, we'll also gain 3 minutes. And so for total, we have gained 9 minutes now out of the 20 minutes we're trying to gain. So let's go to now, this is the Android, right? Now let's look at M4 Pros because let's look at comparing iOS tests, right? And so we don't have the M1s in our data center. So I looked at DuckDuckGo running GitHub Actions, which is likely using M1, which took 17 minutes, and the Bitrise M2 Pros, which took 6 minutes. It's a substantial difference, really. And then I compared with M4 Pros that we have. And so we see that with M4 Pros, there was a 17% improvement. And that's roughly what we see between 15 and 30%. All right, now let's go to the next strategy, which is the Bitrise cache. We have, for the Android projects, we have the Gradle dependency cache, we have the co-located Gradle remote build cache, and Gradle configuration cache, which is experimental. So enabling this cache is pretty straightforward. Just add the cache steps onto the workflow by dragging and dropping them. And then I did do a run first. The first run does not see a reduction in time because the cache is being warmed up. The cache is being, the data is being saved into the cache in the first run. And the second run with the next commit, I saw some improvements. So let's look at that. We saved 35% build time with the remote build cache. So with remote build cache, we have some analysis tools. I want to quickly breeze through it. We have the invocation details that shows you the cache hit rate. That's how much of the task use the cache. Then we can drill down and see the critical path, the longest execution chain in the command execution. And then you can then go into, if a command was executed and if it did not use the cache, you can use enable diagnostic bolt to understand the reason behind it. And finally, we have the ability to compare two command executions, because the first on the top at 50%, the previous one further down was 43%. You can compare them to see what's the difference. And then one last point I want to highlight was Bitrise build cache is co-located within the same data center with the CI machines. So they are side by side, and therefore you don't have to pay for the egress costs associated with having a build cache in another data center with other products, for example. All right, and another poll time. Have you used caching in your workflows? Let me know. Have you used build cache? Have you used only dependency cache so far? And we have used both build cache and dependency cache, or no, I'm interested in trying out build cache. Let us know how used within your workflow so far. All right, so some of you, 1/3 of you have used both build cache and dependency cache. 1/3 of you, about 1/3 is interested in trying out build cache. That's great. And only build cache, and then 1/3 of you. That's a good split. Great. Thank you very much. All right. I think the split remains the same. Here we go. And with build cache, we saved another 2 minutes. So again, we can save the same 2 minutes probably in integration tests and release builds as well. So now we are at 15 minutes saved of the 20 minutes target. All right. Now, build cache, we looked at build cache in Android and build cache in Xcode. There is some undocumented support we are seeing in Xcode 26 beta, and we are exploring that, which is experimental right now, and we are seeing some performance improvement. So you should look out for Xcode cache product in September when Xcode 26 will be released. So finally, we look at the third strategy, which is split or parallel workflows using test sharding first. So I tried running unit test shards. On the left side, you can see first one is unit test no shards, and the second are with shards, 2 shards. And I didn't see a performance improvement because of the way Gradle is. Both the shards have to be compiled. Again, there's compilation involved in both the shards. So we didn't see any gain time with the unit test. Then I tried UI tests. DuckDuckGo has 2 flavors. So for both the flavors, I ran 2 shards each for internal and play. And what we saw was with UI tests running on Bitrise, we saw 6 minutes gain per shard. 11 minutes, 43 seconds, for example, on the top. And the right side, no shard took about 18 minutes. So we saved 6 minutes per shard with sharding for integration test. So overall now, we have saved 20 minutes. Now, you may not save 20 minutes across every of your build, because all builds won't have unit tests and builds and release, but you can use these strategies across your workflows in different ways to gain time, to save build time and improve your efficiency. Now, the idea of running in parallel goes beyond sharding. you can use parallelly build your releases and then use run if conditions. So for that, let's take a look at this Firefox iOS build that is being run on Bitrise. And here you can see that the Firefox has got 3 variants, and the 3 are built in parallel, right? And you also can see the 2 of them were skipped in this particular build because there was no changes in those files associated with those particular builds, or they had a flag set for not running those particular builds. And then you can also see that for that particular Firefox release, you can see that the tests are sharded and run in parallel. And Bitrise has an automatic sharding step, which was used to shard the test cases and run in parallel. And then finally, with the release builds, you can upload the artifacts to Embrace by simply adding a step to your workflow. And this step will upload your build artifact to Embrace for observing. And to talk more about it, I will hand over to David from Embrace to talk about observability.
Great. Thank you, Naveen. So you've released your app into production, and what that means is the focus now has to change. The people involved are no longer the developers building the app, but the users of the app. Can they do what they want to without a problem? Can they maybe buy something like a post or change a flight last minute? And more importantly, will you, the developer, know if they do have a problem? So let's open up a poll. What production information do you currently collect about your application? Is it crashes the networking, the user's entire set of activity? Looks like crashes and networking. Some results around more of the actual user activity. Great. All right. I'm glad so many, at least almost 2/3 of you are looking into user activity. Let's talk more about it. There we go. Thank you. So why do we get production data? There's likely going to be an issue because the next perfect issue-free app will be the first one ever created. And even if everything is working as planned, there's another human on the other side of the interface trying to accomplish something. So the feedback you're going to get is direct. There might be bad app store reviews, the CTO might be yelling, or they might be lower level, but even more insidious. People might stop purchasing through your app, or they might just delete it from their phones. You're probably going to find out that something wasn't working almost always in one of these reactive ways. The goal of observability is making sure that you can be proactive. So for observability, we need the ability to ask meaningful questions about that app while it's live in production. Let's dig in a little bit. What makes up observability? First, there's the context. What was happening? We need to get enough information from the app to know what happened in the app. That information, those signals, we call those telemetry. That telemetry captured off the client should be received without having to change anything about how the app works or without affecting the actual performance of the application in order to tell you what happened. Then the next step is, having received all that information, being able to form some insights. Why did it happen? And when someone was trying to do something, do I have the full picture of what occurred in the application? And am I able to see why something happened based on the data I collected from the app? Finally, the goal, just like with any issue, is remediation. How can I fix it? Hopefully the information we're gathering points to the source of the issue, and it provides enough information that you can see if this issue might be more pervasive. It lets you form a strategy for actionable approaches to fixing issues. Excuse me. And so you might ask, couldn't this all be crash reporting? crashes are part of mobile. They've been a part since phones started having apps on them. But are they the only thing you're looking at? Does the stack trace tell you if the device switched from cell to Wi-Fi and then it suddenly stopped working? Or was there no crash, but the UI locked up for 12 seconds while you were deserializing an API response and you never found out? Because ultimately, issues aren't experienced at the code level, they're experienced at the user level. If the app is active, the code isn't failing, the page loads, but it's still unusable, you probably need to gather some information to tell you what has happened. And to build a reliable, performant app, you want to know how your networking is working on the client, how you handle offline cases, how your business logic affects the UI and vice versa. And so it's not just about crashes. But of course, crashes are real. Don't worry, we have them in detail with various dimensions. But ultimately, our goal is to focus on the user. Capture all the details of a user's session in your app, good and bad, so you can know what's happening for the people on the other side of the screen. So think about applications and all the factors that might affect how users encounter an app. They might be on a phone that was made 10 years ago that you don't really account for. They might be in 3G, 4G, 5G service, or on Wi-Fi, or they might not have service at all. Are they on the latest OS? Are there any location restrictions? Have you been running A/B tests across the application that might be inhibiting their performance? So at the root of Embrace is the user and all the possible factors that could affect their experience. We want to be able to work backwards from any issue to see what led up to it, to see all the activity that created that issue. You want to be able to reproduce the picture correctly and account for things like multiple threads running at once, maybe even a background process that caused the app to hang, even though it wasn't germane to the actual activity. By laying all this out in order, you'll be able to say, here's what happened. And then, now that all those factors are well ordered, you should enrich the data. You can give context and attribution to a specific user's environment, their device, the experiments they might be on. Capture all that detail in high fidelity searchable context, because the important thing here is context. Context is what allows you to form hypotheses, to ask those maybe questions. Maybe they were on a low-end device. Maybe they were in a state that didn't allow certain activities. Maybe the version of the app they're on has a known issue already, and I should refer back to that. And once we have all this information accounted for, you can dig into that context for other users. So did this happen to other users on a specific OS? Were they attempting a specific action? This is where you can start to look at user activity as a whole group of data to be measured. Find out if the issue happened to other users, what other factors might be correlated, were there any regressions? And this sort of single user to many user intuition is the best way to get started building reliability out of this observability data. And I say that word reliability because once we're asking questions of our data, we can step up our game and be more proactive. You can know what kind of data comes from production and then form hypotheses about the reliability of applications as part of a software system. Is our UI rendering correctly for the latest experiment, even if the experiment information arrives late? Is a network request getting a usable payload back from the API? And then we can also bubble these questions up to higher level questions about our users' reliability. What's stopping a user from logging in, from liking a post, from reading an article in full? And so I'll stop here again for another poll and say, or ask, excuse me, how do you measure reliability on mobile? Do you depend on user reports and informal conversations? Do you depend on App Store reviews and crashes? Or do you have performance measurements like latency and flow completion? And it's delightful to see that people are forming measurements, because that's the whole goal of the data. Some still talking about App Store reviews. That's great. All right. So let's go through some of the thinking for reliability. I'm glad so many people are measuring on their own. I'm going to close the poll now. Great. So start with, I know it's affecting my users. Yeah, there are crashes or there are bad network requests occurring while they're in the app. Maybe you'll form metrics out of these. You might see that certain network requests fail to a certain endpoint, and then you can start to group the issues just the same way that you do for crashes. And the nice thing here is, once you've figured out what it is that you want to measure, you can build dashboards that you can glance at every so often, just like SRE teams do in other parts of your application stack. Next, if you've figured out the important metrics, and these aren't metrics that you need to glance at, but they are mission critical metrics, you can start alerting on them. You can set alerting for certain thresholds for something like, oh, people aren't able to buy our product through the app. That means we're losing money. That means someone should jump in right away to remediate it. And you can send an alert to page people, to trigger a Slack notification, or even to make an API call externally, as we'll point to in a few minutes. But then I want to point to something a little broader, which is that with all these signals, networking, crashes, logs, some apps have breadcrumbs, those don't quite give you the picture of what's happening to the user. And unlike that picture at the beginning of this part, users don't know the technical details of what's happening. They only know what's happening in the app, that they tried to pay or log in. And so being able to connect the telemetry that you are gathering to the complaint that a user might have will allow you to give meaning to the telemetry in a different way. Being able to say, I had an issue opening a new page or selecting a fantasy baseball player. You don't need to know the requests, but you do need to know the success of these things. And so using the same telemetry with Embrace, you can build user flows, which allow you to measure the success or the failure or the abandonment of certain flows in the app, entirely based on your own telemetry, nothing predefined, based on the intuitions you built before. And then you can start to ask higher order questions like, is there an issue that keeps users from being able to add a new credit card? And then one step even further, if you know that there are certain factors that are going to affect that flow, what if the question was, is there an issue that keeps users from being able to add a new credit card on specific versions? Or can we bridge between what the product people are telling me and the performance data to actually make this more reliable in a way that works for the user? Or even if performance or adoption is poor, is it due to technical issues we introduced? Or is it a usability concern? Or is it completely out of our hands? So an entirely enriched set of data lets you really reflect back on what happened to the user. And now I'm going to bring back Naveen, and we are going to talk a little bit about integrating these two products for a more reliable release process.
Thanks, David. So let's take a look at this use case where you are using Bitrise to release an app to App Store, a version of your app to App Store. That's the first step. You're starting a phased release. And what you're seeing on the right here on the screen is the Bitrise release management. And you can see that this build is using a phased release over 7 days. And the build artifact has been uploaded to Embrace for observing.
Great. And now that you've started a phased release, even if it's not the full population of your app users, you're going to start to see production data come in. And so you can compare between releases. You can see if there were any regressions. You can see a spike in issues that might affect more users with this release. And then you can set alerting that's triggered by any sort of spike in issue or activities. So here we've set an alert for the crash rate spike in this new version. If that threshold is hit, all defined by the developer, instead of paging an engineer to figure it out, you can trigger a network request directly to the Bitrise API for that specific release.
All right. So now Embrace, having noticed this spike in crashes, they've called the Bitrise API, which triggers the pause release workflow, the screen you're seeing on the right, which can then go ahead and pause the phased release that's ongoing. And you can see that here on the next screen that the release has been paused. And so you have managed a crash situation effectively in an automated fashion. And then finally, as part of the same workflow, you can notify your team. And also, coming soon in the future, we're exploring the possibility of taking the crash logs and identifying the cause for the issue and including that in the notification. As you in the earlier ahead in the presentation, we talked about the AI issue identifier, and then even possibly identifying a fix for it and creating a PR and including that in the notification. So that is a use case where observability and your CI/CD can work together to make your app more successful. All right, and so we have the challenge coming up. Try Bitrise Build Cache and receive a gift card. To talk more about it, I give it back to Seb.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, folks. I'll keep it brief because we want to jump into the Q&A, but essentially, we would love you to try out Build Cache. And we know that the best way to realize the value that the tool can offer is really to see it for yourselves. And we know that it's so easy to put these sort of things on the to-do list and then subsequently forget. So we wanted to offer a little bit of motivation. So the first 20 folks to give our Build Cache product a go will get a $100 Amazon voucher, which you can also choose to donate to a charity of your choice. We've got some instructions that Naveen has kindly recorded to help you with the challenge. You can see if you follow the link that's appeared on the screen in the webinar, and I think we're going to post the link in the chat as well. We're also going to send it to you at the end of the session. But essentially, using the open source DuckDuckGo repo, we'd like you to build that and see what the time's at, and then to build it again, but the second time using the Build Cache trial, and see for yourself the time saving that is offered. We'd love to see what kind of savings you're seeing at your end. And so then it's just a case of sending us the URLs of the 2 successful builds. You can send them to me or you can send them to Naveen. And yeah, like we said, the first 20 to successfully complete the task will get the reward. So we'll leave it with you. We'll send you a reminder afterwards. And right now we'll jump into the Q&A. So I think we had a few questions come in during the session. So we'll go through these in the order in which they came through. And if you want to provide any clarifications, please just drop them into the chat. But we're going to start with a question from Marianne. Do the AI steps run on Bitrise, or do they run on LLM providers like OpenAI? And that one came through in the context of the start of the presentation, Naveen, when you were talking about the AI custom steps.
That's a great question. So the AI, we call the OpenAI API or Claude Code API. The most important part, number one, is we are running agentic AI. So we have the Claude Code, OpenAI Codex, so you can use either. And the API key is provided by the customer at this point. And in the future, we look at more options where we provide options where we meter the access to the API. And so the access to the settings on whether you can store the code, etc., on the OpenAI. You can control that setting with your OpenAI key or Cloud Code key. And the execution, the source code and the logs are in the Bitrise VM machine, and the VM is destroyed afterwards. So it doesn't go outside of that. I hope that answered that question.
Brilliant. Thank you, Naveen. All right. So sticking in the context of the AI steps, Eugene asked a question about the AI issue identifier. So is that designed to identify Bitrise config problems, or is it problems with the actual Gradle project?
Hey, Eugene, that's a great question. So what the step is triggered when the build fails. The build could have failed due to a config problem, or it could be due to a test failure, or there was an issue with the Gradle script, for example. It will identify, because the step has access to the code, the logs, and the config file, it can identify the problem wherever it is and suggest the solution. Right now, what we have is we stop at suggesting the solution, and soon we'll have the ability to fix that as well, where you'll have a fix it button, and then you can run it. And then Bitrise will try and fix the problem, run the tests again, and if it works, create a PR. I hope that answered the question.
Cool, thanks, Naveen. All right, another question from Marianne. Is Build Cache just for Android?
Oh, that's a great question. Here in the example today, we looked at Build Cache for using Gradle. With Build Cache for Gradle, we have Build Cache for Bazel as well. And for Xcode, I mentioned afterwards, Xcode 26 has some undocumented support for Build Cache. So we're working on it, and look out in September, we will have something for Xcode as well. Thank you for the question.
Brilliant, thank you. All right, another one now, this time from Max, who is asking, how are the UI tests run? Are they on simulators or real devices?
Oh, fantastic question. Thank you, Max. And here, the tests, in the example I showed with the DuckDuckGo, I ran the tests on simulators on Bitrise. You can also use the Firebase test devices step. You don't have to have an account within Bitrise. You can use the step, an account is included, and you can use that for testing on real devices, including using Flank or just directly the Firebase test devices step. So you have both the options. And with simulators, you can run multiple simulators in Bitrise. You can run simulators in parallel, and you can find the right approach that works for you. Thank you, Max.
All right. And we have one last question in the stream today, which is from Vasil, who is asking, is it possible to receive notifications, so yeah, Slack, WebEx, and so on, for a failed build?
Yes, Vasil, thank you for asking the question. Like in the integration scenario we looked at, where at the end we had the Slack step that you can add for sending notification, you can use that to send the notification. You can have conditions like send the notification only when the build failed. And you also, you can include, for example, the reason for the failure, and then send that to the team so that they are immediately aware that one of their builds failed. Absolutely, you can. Thanks, Vasil.
Okay. All right, folks. Well, that's all of the questions we had today. If you do have any more questions, or if you've got anything you wanted to ask Dave or Naveen, please do feel free to send us a note. Like I said, we will send you the recording of this session. We'll also send you a follow-up with the details of the little competition that we're doing for the Build Cache trial. So please check that out as well. And all that remains at this point for me is to thank our speakers, Naveen and Dave. Thank you very much for all this content today, folks. That was really, really interesting. And to thank you folks for joining us today and for being here with us. So with that, have a great rest of your day, and thanks again.